I'll admit I'm a little late on this one, but we all know what we're talking about here. 2311 in Front Row filed a lawsuit against NASCAR and the France family. The headlines are flying right now. ESPN, newspapers, all of these different online sources, all saying the same thing in one way or another. Michael Jordan sues NASCAR, and that is going to make a lot of optics changes when it comes to how NASCAR is marketed and looks at the moment. But my big question with this, and forgive me for being maybe a little callous with the way I ask it, is will this matter? Is there going to be substantial change, or is this just a flash in the pan and NASCAR once again will crush its opponents when it comes to how it governs this sport? Well, let's look into a few things, starting with the claims of the lawsuit itself, because a lot of these say that the charter agreement just plainly was unfair. Now, it is worth also saying this is all from the team's perspective. NASCAR will have to give their perspective soon, so we'll find out what they think on it, and then we kind of decide on the middle. But if any truth is to be coming out of what the teams have put out with this lawsuit with 2311 in Front Row, well, it's pretty damning against NASCAR leadership. There's a couple things I want to look at here. First off, NASCAR controls who gets what and if the teams can acquire new cars or parts if, say, they're in a crash or have damage, or if they just have to repair them even if the teams don't think it's up to safety snuff. Well, that's something that has been huge with the next gen so far, and the fact that based on what it looks like, NASCAR basically owns the next gen car and everything about it, the teams really can't have any wiggle room with it, which I think is something that needs to be changed. Personally, I was not a fan of the fact they went to a spec car. I think that you need a little bit of dominance, a little bit less of parity in order to get the cars to pass, get further apart, and encourage real competition that is not just the smallest little minutia of a difference between them. They also prohibit teams from participating in any professional stock car racing other than NASCAR. For an example, this would be teams, for instance, if they could field SRX teams, maybe the Cars Tour, something like that. But I would say this one I at least understand. I don't see NFL players like Justin Jefferson or Aaron Rodgers or you name it, any major NFL players and stars or teams for that matter, competing in any other football league that comes out. But that is something they talked about. In football, there is at least other leagues to go to if you're a player, if maybe you're somebody who's upset in an organization. You don't really get that in NASCAR on a wide or top level on television, and that's really what's king in this. So this is the one I most understand NASCAR on, even if I don't fully agree with it. And this is how NASCAR has been, I will say, since the beginning. Just ask Lee Petty, who lost a championship because he dared compete in a series that wasn't NASCAR and lost all his points. Another part of this is now that NASCAR seized control of teams' intellectual properties to be used to their benefit. The NFL kind of does this, but it's sort of a different workaround with it. The teams have the commissioner work for them, whereas this one is the teams do all the work for themselves, and then NASCAR siphons it off. It kind of reminds me of the movie A Bug's Life with Hopper a little bit. There also is, of course, the clause of no permanent charters. That's a really big part that fans and teams alike have been really clamoring against. They also say there's no ability for the teams to resist when NASCAR makes unilateral rule changes. Again, NASCAR, when the France family especially, has ruled with an iron fist since day one. Look back at the start of NASCAR, the first couple decades, Big Bill France would ban people for life from the sport if they disagreed with him in certain ways or spoke up. The likes of Curtis Turner and the Flocks, for instance, some of the biggest stars and pioneers of this sport, were kicked out at different points. So this is something, again, has been the way it has been for a long time, but maybe it's time for change. And then lastly, of the big points we're looking at, there's plenty of other ones. I'll link the full lawsuit in the description below as a reference point, but they say that revenue is actually less than they could get in a competitive market due to NASCAR owning the tracks, among all of the other restrictions, and the fact that NASCAR basically owns a monopoly over stock car racing in America. And quite frankly, you could probably argue in this form with oval racing in the world. So that's something that is pretty true. And my question for that one is, if NASCAR and the teams and all of this goes to court and NASCAR has to break stuff up, which tracks and which intellectual properties are they getting rid of? I don't think they're going to split. I don't think they're going to do something stupid like that. But this is probably the furthest away that those competing in the sport at every level and those running the sport at every level have been in a long time. Now, I do want to say something really quick, because a lot of people saw this and saw how unfair it was and are getting mad at the teams who did sign the new charter agreement. To which I would say this: yes, I understand why you might be upset. A lot of people were really hammering at them and wanting them to not be anonymous, but come out and be open with their opinions. I wish that were the case as well. But you also have to think in a couple ways too. This could have been part of the plan of the lawsuit altogether. You have the front men, front row in 2311, Michael Jordan, Bob Jenkins, those who can put capital into this and those who cannot be bought out as well. But also those who are really making a new brand for themselves, not to damage the current brands like Hendrick, Gibbs, Penske, Childers, you name it. Trust me, there's a reason I brought up those teams. So this could be part of the plan with it all along. They sign it, and it shows those who are looking into this case that they were basically coerced into doing this unfairly and possibly illegally. The other part is, I want to say this on just a base level. Thousands of jobs would be put at risk in doing this if every team sued NASCAR. Think of it like this. This economy right now is in the gutter, and we have people striking, we have different prices going up, inflation all over the place in the past couple of years. It has been rough for everybody, and those working for race teams are in the same boat. They're not the ones making millions of dollars. They're the ones working on salaries comparable to what all of us work on. So when I see people on Twitter who have it easy to just say, well, they should have been doing this, they're appalled, they're just disgusted with all of this, they don't know the responsibility that a lot of these team owners do of having dozens, sometimes hundreds of people working underneath them whose lives and families depend on this money. So I don't blame teams necessarily for being afraid of what NASCAR would do if they spoke out. And I applaud 2311 and Front Row for having the ability and the cojones to actually go out and do so. We can both praise the two teams that are the front people for this, while also not pushing down the ones who remained anonymous and did sign this. Because again, this could all be part of the plan, and there are plenty of people who could suffer because of this, who I'm pretty sure these owners would not want to have happen. So again, I'm gonna reiterate, will this matter? What is there really to say that this matters? Is there anyone who spoke out in a certain way that might sway anything? Well, NASCAR and many of its media lackeys will probably say it's not important, and they'll be out in force. We've already seen it early on with two people who are actually very well respected in this sport and industry. Starting out with Ryan McGee from ESPN. He said this on Twitter and also partially in his article about this whole thing. He said, quote, "On the same day the NASCAR community teamed up for Helene Aid, two of its teams announced they'd be suing the sport. Debate the antitrust lawsuit all you want, but there is no debate about the callousness of the timing. Wait a damn week." Well, I'm going to put it like this too. I think that, like in the article, calling it selfish and classless and thoughtless, I think that's apt in this situation. For the writer, I'm sorry, but this is so off base. For instance, Michael Jordan has donated over $1 million to what also is his local community in North Carolina, where he grew up. This is not just the NASCAR bubble, all right? This, in my opinion, is terrible, right? Helene and the damage and destruction and unfortunate death that this has caused is horrible. I wish the best for all of those families. I know we all do. But this is unrelated from a lawsuit. I'm sorry, but if they announced a lawsuit a week later, Helene wasn't just going to change course. The world does not revolve around NASCAR. It does not revolve around your opinions of NASCAR and opinions of timing. Listen, I think it's more callous to emotionally manipulate people into your way of thinking by using death and destruction and suffering of your so-called community, the place that you say you care about. And I think you do. I think you're well-intentioned. I just think you're so far off base, instead of being on the baseball diamond, you're up in the third row of the stands. At this point, you need to be held to the high standard that you are at, Ryan McGee, and this is not it. But it probably does pay to be in the clique and not get called out by people of power. And Larry McReynolds, America's crew chief, also got in hot water for his opinion of it, and more how he delivered it than anything. He said, and I apologize now, this is a bit of a soliloquy, "We've got an organization that's been here not even 4 years that all of a sudden is saying we got to change the way NASCAR's run. I'm all about change. Change is what makes you better. But you know what? When I see Richard Childress, Jack Roush, Rick Hendrick, and Joe Gibbs, that's been here longer than some of these guys have been pooping yellow." Interesting way of putting it. "And they signed off and said that this is good. We're okay. There's things we don't like about it, but we're going to do what's best for the sport and best for our business." And they signed off on it, and these people have been here, either not competitive or only been here 4.5 years, have been saying the way we've done business for 76.5 years is wrong. Well, again, I have a lot of problem with this as well, not just because I'm on the team side fully. We are only hearing the team side, but one, we've been clamoring for business changes since the 2000s, since, for some people, the 90s. NASCAR has been behind a long time, right? So people coming in and trying to change things, change is difficult. It's painful at times. It can really be intrusive in the way things are run, but it has to be done in some of these ways. We've changed everything we don't need to change about the sport and the rules side and competition side, yet kept a business model that's been around and really been out of date since probably the mid-90s. We need new ideas. We need new blood. It's what the sport needs to survive. We can't have the same old people who have been boring and just going with the grain. We need people against the grain, even if they fail. NASCAR's business practices can't stay the way they were 76.5 years ago. This is not the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you name it. This is the 2020s. Things will have to change. It's just the way society is going. There could be a few ways I think that we actually see real change out of this. Two major ones that I think are the most likely based on the way that people have talked about it that have more knowledge than I. NASCAR could settle out of court. It's the cleanest finish to all of this. You keep it out of the media. You keep the mess to a minimum. You capitulate to some of the demands. You actually come to the table with good negotiations, and changes start being made immediately, and you can start mending bridges. That's probably the best option for the France family. Or they could go nuclear. It'll get a lot uglier. NASCAR will fight this on a big level, and everyone will see it. NASCAR has to open its books. We see everything, what they've lied about, what they've told the truth about, and we get a long, drawn-out legal battle that only hurts the sport and the fan. No matter what, change is coming. And over time, it's going to be big. Either teams will gain more money and control, or NASCAR clamps down and everyone suffers too. But with that, I want to know what you think. Do you think we're going to see more big changes, or is this just a diversion from the main storyline and nothing's going to happen? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like in this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great and fun NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and until next time, have a good one.